It's DD on the spot.
Welcome to an episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to my guest today, I'd like to remind everyone to please like and subscribe down below if you enjoy this content. We greatly appreciate it. We have Brandon Kellum of American Standards. Brandon, how are you doing?
Not too bad. How about yourself, man?
I'm doing great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get into music, kind of what your backstory is in the musical genre, and what you guys are up to currently?
Yeah, I think I never really felt like I fit in anywhere as far as like the cliques and stuff at school went. You know, I would hang out with the skater people and guys that were into sports and the nerds and everybody else, and I kind of just mingled with everybody. So starting the band and getting into music was really the way to create something that I felt was like mine, like my own group. You know, so at the time, no one really actually played an instrument. I think a buddy had got a guitar for Christmas or something. I said I would sing, and I had never sang in my life. Another one of my friends, he was really into rap at the time, but he did like Linkin Park. So that was like kind of the end of being like, all right, what do you want to play in the band? I remember him saying, I want to play turntables. And I said, well, we need a bass player, so you should probably just ask for a bass for Christmas. So he got a bass, and we started playing from there. So pretty much it was just honestly a way to feel like we belonged to something, you know? And then from that came, pretty much all the friends I have today are all the results of just playing music and meeting other bands, meeting people at venues, at shows, and things like that.
So is there like a specific time that you kind of realized when you were starting out that like, hey, I could do this for a career?
Yeah, I think when I was young, I kind of went at it just wholeheartedly and kind of maybe dumb in a sense that we would just go out there, we'd take any tour we were offered.
Yeah.
We didn't really care for making money or playing with the right bands. We just wanted to be out there doing it. We kind of grinded for a solid 5 years doing that, and then started to get burnt out. And that's, when we were in our early 20s. And then everybody started kind of getting adult lives and realized that they didn't want to grind as much anymore. So that's when we took a little bit of a break. And when we took a break and came back to it, and we no longer thought music was the dream, it was just more of a passion. That's when it started becoming fun again. That's when we were able to do it on our own terms, play the shows that we wanted to play, decide to sit out tours if they were right tours for us, and it just made it a lot more enjoyable.
So when you're talking about like getting on the grind when you're really young and trying to just get exposure out, how important for it was you guys just playing as many shows as possible, or was there ever like the quality of shows that you wanted to do?
I think for the first few months, it's important for anybody in any profession just to put as much out there as possible to build some type of following and type of interest and buzz. But I think there's a certain point where there's like a diminishing return. If you do that for too long, then people will take it for granted, and they'll say, well, if this band's playing every single week, I can put off this show. I don't need to go see them play the same set over and over. Definitely a point where you got to scale back and say, okay, I'm only going to play once a month or once every other month in a certain town. That way you build, that same excitement for every show.
Yeah. So is that one of the difficulties that you guys kind of had to overcome, was just realizing when was the right time to play and like where was the right time to play?
Yeah, it's because like the thing that you want to do most is play shows. So it feels bad to me to turn down a show. I mean, today alone we probably got 2 or 3 different show offers that I had to say, I would love to do this show because our buddies' bands are on the show, or it's a place that we like playing, but I can't play 5 shows this month and just not bring anything of value to the show other than it's almost self-servingness. If I'm saying I'm playing a show, but I'm not going to be able to bring people to the show because they saw us 4 other times that month, it's not really fair to the promoter or the venue or the other bands.
So where did the name American Standards come from? Is it just something that popped into your guys' head, or was there a meaning behind it?
Yeah, it was kind of just a tongue-in-cheek joke at the time, honestly. This was around 2010, and it seemed like every single band was just taking a random word and making it plural, or adding ER to the word. So we threw out all these names, and no one really liked them. And then I went to the restroom, and I looked down at the toilet and saw American Standard is a brand name of toilet. So as a joke, I went back into the living room and told the guys, let's just put an S on it and be called American Standards. And I didn't think that 8 years later that name would have still stuck.
Yeah.
It's honestly a joke, but it's also fun, man. I think a lot of people take it very seriously, like it's a political band, or if it's a play on, the style of music, the jazz standards and American standards. And so I think it has like all these little facets that people assume what it means, but at the end of the day for us, it's kind of the same I think mindset we have with the band, which is you can do something serious, or you can be going through a hard time, but still see the bright side and have a little fun with it.
Absolutely. So when you guys were first forming, was there any discussion as to like what type of genre you guys were going to be playing, or did everyone kind of have the same mindset going into the band that this is the type of music that we want to play?
I think everybody in the band catfished each other into what we were going to do as a band. So when I came into the band, they had the drummer, they had a guitarist, and they knew me from my other band. They asked what I wanted to do, and I told them I wanted to do something more like punk influence, more like Refused or Snapcase, or like Gallows. And I think at the time they said, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And then I went into it, and it definitely wasn't that. It was more hardcore, more metalcore. But it was something still I very much liked, and something that I had been doing for quite a while before that, playing guitar for bands. So I think as we brought people into the bands, it was like, well, what do you like? We'll bring in that influence and make it a little closer to that. But because of that, it was 5 different people that all had different interests. And how do we like make it work is one thing.
Yeah, how would you guys make it work? Because I mean, if you have 5 different guys that have 5 different ideas, is it just a lot of compromising and a lot of equal sharing of genre or different like values of music, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, totally a ton of compromise, because especially when it was Cody, our first guitarist, the guy that really founded the band, him and I are both really strong personalities, and we'd clash all the time, So it would be him writing an idea and me like trying to change it and mold it into something that fit more towards what I wanted, and then Corey coming in, or the drummer coming in and giving their input. So at the end, nobody was really getting exactly what they wanted, but it was something completely new and independent of everybody's idea. Mm-hmm. So I don't honestly think from the first 2 albums, anything that we recorded sounded anything like what I had in my head at the time that we were writing it. It was just kind of a amalgamation of everything else that everybody had in mind.
So when you guys are writing your songs, is there any themes that you guys like to explore more than any other, or is there like a main, or you guys like to mix it up a lot when it comes like lyrically?
Yeah, I think we like to take, like I said, we like to take something that's a little more serious in tone and have a little fun with it, So a lot of the stuff that we have, we've been referred to as a political band, and I don't ever see us as a band that's like really pushing our morals or our viewpoints. I see us more of like questioning stuff and trying to put it out there and say, hey, think for yourself. So if anything, as a reoccurring theme, we kind of put stuff out there and we poke a little fun at it and use a little satire to make people think of it in a different way. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to say, I want you to believe this by listening to me. Because if someone tells me, like, believe what I believe, that puts me off from them right away.
Oh, yeah.
We're definitely trying to do that. We're just trying to say, here's some things that you should question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because if you're a political band too, you're gonna probably alienate half the people in the country anyway if you like make statements. So I mean, to be a lot more ambiguous, that's probably a lot smarter of a business move. But what was the first song that you guys recorded as a band? Do you remember what it was?
The first song we recorded was probably we had Impossibilities or Endless, either that or Happiness Doesn't Sell. I think we recorded those at the same time, and we did them at a buddy's house. He had like a living room recording set up. And it was one of those things where, like, I think I was yelling in a bathroom or something like that. And we took that, we pressed it to 500 CDs. And I remember at the time, Cody had the idea of, like, instead of having this professionally done, let's get, sheets of paper, fold up, like, envelopes, the CD envelopes to put the CDs in. Let's stencil and paint everyone individually, write all the lyrics. And it sounded great for about the first 10 CDs. Mm-hmm. But then when it took about a week to do this for 500 CDs, all of us, wow, we bit off way more than we could chew.
Oh, yeah.
That's to this day. I don't know if I actually held on to one of those. So I'm like, turn these out. I didn't even keep one for myself.
Well, it seems like your band is a lot. You guys kind of like to go in there just guns blazing, basically, and just try to find stuff up yourself before. Is that how you would describe kind of your guys' process with all music? Is that you guys kind of like to just go in there guns blazing, and then you like more firsthand experiences as opposed to like going to the professionals? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, and it's all trial and error. Everything that we've done through doing it one way and learning it worked or didn't work, and then just kind of improving next time. So whether it be recording or the videos or anything else, even like from the musicianship, I think all of us, with the exception of Mitch, our drummer, are all kind of self-taught. Our guitarist, our bass players, all get in there and learn, what sounds good and what doesn't sound good.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest struggle for you guys starting out when you guys first had the band, and how did you guys get over it?
I don't know. I think at that point when we first started out, we'd all pretty much been in other bands. So a lot of the basic stuff we already knew. We knew how to book shows. We knew how to book tours. The only thing that was hard was really understanding, like, this is at the tail end of MySpace when American Standard started and right when Facebook was brand new. So it was really just learning. It's like there's so many ways to get yourself out there, but it's like it just felt like everything fell on deaf ears, you know? Mm-hmm. So just understanding how to actually make music count once you put it out, you know, not just put it out and have 10 people hear it. How do you actually get everybody to hear it when every band in the world's online trying to stream, listen to my stuff?
Now, this is an interesting question because I've always wanted to ask bands this, but what was it like pre-Facebook when it came to social media promotion? What was MySpace like? Was it? I know it's vastly different than it is now, but what specifically was probably the most shocking difference once Facebook and those services came out to you guys when it came to marketing and getting people to follow your band?
Yeah, I think we just didn't know what we had when we had MySpace. I think we all complained about it, and there were so many good things about it. Like, I mean, one a good example is the very first tour I ever did. We booked it all through MySpace, and I remember it was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and about a week the shows all got canceled. On the road, we rebooked and played every single night, even the shows that got canceled, just by going through the top 8s of, you know, the venues, because the top 8s of the venues would have other bands or other promoters. It was so easy to connect with people like that. It was also from the standpoint of putting your music out there. You weren't fighting like the Facebook algorithm like you have now, where, you know, you have a few thousand people and only a couple, 100 people, if even that, see your post. Mm-hmm. Anything you post gets out there and everybody sees it. So it's much easier to connect. It was more like you're connecting as a person than right now if you're a business or a podcast or anything else, and you're using a page that's actually a page meant for that, not your personal page. You basically have to pay to have anybody see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I figured that out the hard way, too, starting out. Definitely. So when you guys are on tour, are there any locations that you guys prefer to play at as opposed to, or any favorite spots to play at?
Yeah, I think favorite spots versus like what spots do well on shows are like complete opposite. Meaning we do really well in the Midwest, and we love playing out in the Midwest because, you know, there's not as many shows every night. The people come out, they really appreciate all different styles of music, which is awesome. I think sometimes there's not as much to do, so we get to the venue a few hours early or a day early, and there's just not a lot to do out there.
Yes.
But the opposite side of that is like when you play the East Coast, you play the West Coast, you play, Los Angeles, any given night there's 10 or 20 shows going on. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff to do in the area of the venue, but you're also competing against 10 or 20 other shows. Yeah. So it's harder to get people in the door normally until you play there, a handful of times. Which luckily, being from Phoenix, places like Las Vegas and LA, they're 5-hour drives.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get people to actually take notice of us until we had played those areas.
So one of the things that I really have learned since I started this podcast was there's always that movie trope that like tour life is just all it is just one huge party and it's just everyone has fun all the time. And I've come to realize it's definitely not that. It is a lot of work, and then a lot of bands, especially when you're starting out, you end up losing money on the tour as opposed to gaining any money. It's just about getting your name out there. But what is your first tour? What was that like, and how has tour life for you evolved over time?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, definitely up front, you're just kind of doing it, get your name out there. You're lucky if you make enough money to pay off your gas and everything. But I think for us, touring has changed quite a bit because, like I said, when we started, it was just about getting our name out there and playing as much as possible. We would drive 6 hours to get to a venue and 6 hours after the show, so it was no fun around it really. And like you said, maybe when you see people that are in bands on their Instagram feed, you see all these awesome pictures of them partying and having fun, but most likely that's like the one actual thing that happened all day that they posted on their, on their. What they didn't post was the 6-hour drive to get to the venue, or all that time they're spent just hanging out in the parking lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has changed. I mean, it's cool now because one of our guys, Corey, he loves to drive, so he drives through the night. We wake up, we have the entire day to hang out before we have sound check. We get to see the town a little bit more. It definitely is more expensive. We bring home less money, but more often than not, we're doing a little bit better than breaking even. Yeah. Long time to get there. I mean, we've been doing it for like 8 years now. So those few years were, out of pocket 100%. Yeah.
How would you say your band's sound has evolved throughout those 8 years?
I think we learned a little bit more about dynamics and not just writing riff after riff after riff and never coming back to a riff. never kind of letting it breathe for a little bit. It was just about how much noise can we make in a 2 or 3 minute period. So I think we talk a lot more about dynamics. We talk a lot more about structure. We work together more as a group as opposed to one person coming to the table and having 95% of a song ready. So those are all things that took time to get to. I think we're still getting there. I mean, even as we just released our single "Weep" about 2 months ago, and even with that, I felt like, okay, this is the best version of what we've done in 8 years. Now I'm just excited to do the next thing because I know it's going to be a little bit of a step ahead of what we've done already.
Yeah. So when coming from the Phoenix, Arizona, well, I'm from the Minneapolis area, and one of the things that I realized that there's a huge metal scene that I would have never guessed. What is the big genre that's really the standard in Phoenix?
Yeah, right now I think the thing that seems to be buzzing is like melodic hardcore. Mm-hmm. But in heavy music, melodic hardcore bands like Counterparts, those style of bands are doing pretty well. We've got a fair number of bands here that do pretty decent in that style. Lifelink and Genesis Company and Way Under. Those are all bands from here that are doing pretty well and touring quite a bit. But outside of heavier music, I think indie does really well. Indie rock and DJ music, across the board, EDM seems like it's kind of the thing. So yeah, I mean, you're right though. There are a ton of huge, or not huge, but a bunch of bigger bands from Arizona that are doing really well in the heavier styles. And it's either competing to do what's already out there, which is melodic hardcore, or just trying to be the heaviest, most abrasive thing you could possibly listen to, because there's a market for that too. People want to be able to listen to something and say like, I've never heard something that's heavy, and show all their friends. But the unfortunate part is when they do that, then they listen to that band for a month until they find the next heaviest thing, Yeah.
Was it hard for you guys when you're starting out, kind of not being in the genre that's like the defining genre of the area? Was it hard for you guys to find fans, or was it always kind of being in bands prior to that? Did you guys just carry off on most of your fans into your current band?
I think when we started off, we had probably a better following locally than maybe we do now. I think more people have heard our name now, but back then I think we got pegged into a lot of just like hardcore and hardcore punk shows. So we played with the same bands a lot. We played for the same people, so it'd be the same 50 to 100 people at every show. I think what happened after a couple of years is we started deciding we wanted to stop playing for the same bands and the same venues over and over again and branching out into other styles. So now we kind of we don't fit on any show nicely, just like kind of like I was saying in high school, I didn't fit into any group entirely. I just kind of belonged to all the groups, Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel like as a band right now. We play sometimes hardcore shows or metal shows, sometimes we play pop punk shows, sometimes we play death metal shows. Across the board, if it's a band that we like, we'll play with that band regardless of if it makes sense for our style or not. Because at the end of the day, it's just about, maybe someone that's coming to the show wanting to have known about our style otherwise.
Yeah. So one of the big things that we like to talk about here is like performing live, the high and the thrill that it gives the musicians. We always have had musicians come on and say it's unlike any drug you could ever take. It's just putting in all that hard work in your music and then finally being able to play it live in front of people and just to see their reactions. What does playing live mean to you personally?
Playing live is a great way to completely forget about anything that's worrying you at the time. Meaning when you, from the moment the doors open to the end of the night, it doesn't matter if you're, having problems at work or school or in your relationships or whatever happened. It gives you this kind of almost like a pause button on everything else and just allows you to live in that moment for a few hours. So I think that's probably the coolest thing, playing music live. But I also think hopefully that's what we're able to do for the people that come out to the shows too, is just make them forget about, having a bad day or whatever it was and just kind of live in the moment for a little bit.
Yeah. Do you guys as a band have any traditions or superstitions before you take the stage that like you have to do? Like we have some bands that say like they drink a certain type of beer, they drink something, or they like all stretch together or whatever. Do you guys have a tradition, or you guys just like to wing it kind of when you get there?
I don't know if we have one like tradition that all of us follow. I mean, definitely Corey and I and Steve, we all will have a couple drinks before the show. And then I definitely try to stretch now because as I'm getting older, if I paying for it the next day. But outside of that, man, I think when we first started, we would give everybody a high five, right? We're all standing around the drum set right before we play. Everybody gives each other a high five. I have a megaphone. We turn on the megaphone and get that blaring, and then we go.
So we love to hear first concert stories or first performance stories. Like, what was the first place that you guys as this band performed at, and how'd it go?
The first show, I bet you, was probably one of these like DIY house shows. So Cody, our like guitarist, he was like he had basically a back house out and back behind his house, a guest house, and we would throw shows in that house, and it was just like a living room, maybe held 40 people, jam packed. But every time we did that, we would get the barbecue grill going. We'd have people out. It would just be kind of like a big party, you know, a big thing to hang out at. Mm-hmm. We'd have 3 or 4 of our friends' bands play it, and people would be jumping off the counters and, you know, doing kitchen counter dives. And it was just kind of a big, fun experience. And the fun thing about that, too, is that maybe also spoke to a lot of, like, that whole idea that we would have, like, our friends' bands play, where we would have, like, a more of a, like, a reggae-style band play. And then we would have this, like, really tech grind band play, and then, like, a pop-punk band play. And since we were booking it, we were basically able to do whatever we want. We'd set up the houses, we'd have different themes and stuff like that. So I think our first show with American Standard is very, very likely one of those shows.
Do you think that I mean, like you already said before, you formed the band, you guys had a good idea of like how to make show or how to like get shows available and how to tour and everything. But do you think those own self-promoted shows that you had really helped you guys kind of learn the business?
Yeah, no, they allowed us to kind of own the success of the show. You know, like when you know, like, if you don't get the word out there, if you don't get the right bands on the show, if you don't create an experience for everybody, no one's going to be there. So that kind of put all the ownership on us and allowed us to do it the way that we would want it to be done. And I think a lot of time we still to this day, we're pretty damn involved when we get put on a show. You know, if there's any opportunity to get our friends' bands on the show or anything like that, we'll be the first ones to talk to the promoters about, you know, we know these guys are grinding right now, and they you know, deserve the same platform that we have, and try to put other people up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've come to realize that the music industry is a huge support system too, because everyone's just trying to just produce music and just make it as available to as many people as possible, just to, you know, help people out. But what was one fact about the music business that really surprised you from when you started out to towards now that maybe you wouldn't have realized ahead of time?
I don't know. I think one thing that like surprises me now, and as it continues to go, is how much people are straying from like the traditional getting a good amp and, you know, miking the amp to record and getting a good drum tone and like actually playing a real set for their recordings. And it's very much going towards a place where it's, you know, you're direct inputting your guitar into an After Effects, you're programming your drums or triggering your drums or whatever it is. And it's less of the real instrument feel. And being a person that maybe is not in music, I think people's ears are kind of changing. Their taste for music is changing because they're expecting everything to be perfect. You know, they're expecting the biggest, beefiest tones at all time and absolutely perfect drums. But like sometimes I feel like that takes away the humanity from the music when you're not actually playing the drums yourself or actually, you know, finding the right miking and the right amp for everything. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's kind of surprised me, how everybody's kind of taken that on. And even when going into live shows, I mean, there's a lot of bands that we play with now that they're playing to their backing tracks, and they're so low in the mix that, you know, they're not even playing their leads. The singer's got 3 tracks of vocals on the PA. The drummer, you know, he's got all of his stuff triggered, and it's nothing against that because, I mean, a lot of bands sound great doing it, but it's just something very different from when we kind of started off, and the only option you had was to get a good amp if you wanted to sound good.
Yeah. Do you think that the way that the technology has evolved over the last 8 years has helped you guys with your musical ability and made it easier for you guys?
I don't know. We're kind of still old school, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think all our songs still kind of start with getting in a practice room and jamming out the ideas together. So I think for most people, it probably does help a lot. You know, it allows one person to write a song, especially guitarists now. If a guitarist knows how to program their own drums, they can write an entire song from start to finish, send it to the vocalist, and no one was ever in a room together. Yeah. And definitely helps. It allows you to do it, you know, from opposite sides of the country if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. But I also heard that you only have one person that is on that song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you guys have planned for maybe like the next 12 months? Do you guys have any tours coming up, or what's the schedule looking like for you guys?
Yeah, so right now we're actually working on recording a couple more songs. We're going to release the singles. We're doing music videos for each one, so we're trying to kind of put a lot of focus on each one and then put it out every other month, have a new song. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Our next local show is going to be September 9th at the Nile Theater in Mesa, which is with Lionheart, Easy Money, and a few other bands. And then after that, we're working on hopefully another Midwest tour because it's been a little while. It's probably been almost a year since we've done a Midwest tour. But between all that, I'm sure we'll do some weekends and some smaller stuff.
So you're one of the few bands on here that we've had that does music videos. So I was wondering, when it comes to doing music videos, do you guys always have the idea written up for what the music video is going to look like when you guys are recording the song, and then do you guys hire someone to do the video for like the quality and the production? How do music videos work for American standards?
Yeah, it varies each time. I think we've worked with a lot of different people that do videos out here in Arizona. Normally it is a guy that's local. It's someone that's normally only coming in with 1 or 2 people to kind of set it up. But we almost always pitch them an idea and say, okay, this is kind of what our vision is, but we want you to put your spin on it too. So it's almost like they get to show a little bit of their art, but we're also giving them a little direction on like, this is a meaning of the song, this is a tone and the vibe, and maybe here's some visuals that we want to work with.
Yeah. So what is the biggest difficulty that you guys have, or what's the biggest difficulty that the normal population wouldn't realize when filming a music video? Because we've had a lot of people on, you're singing the song multiple times, and it can get kind of tiresome at a lot of the time. But for you personally, what is the most difficult part of filming a music video?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're right, especially in Arizona, one of the hardest parts is you do have to play the song, for a solid 3 or 4 hours in a row. And if you're doing something outside, it's 115 degrees outside. If you're doing something inside, you normally, you don't have fans and everything blowing on you the whole time. Yeah. So it's that's one piece. The other piece is maybe the same thing that's difficult with music is like it is a compromise every time. Like you always have something really awesome and great planned in your head, and it doesn't always turn out exactly how you have it in your head. So getting past the point that just because it doesn't look like you have in your head or the song doesn't sound like you maybe originally intended, that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just it's different, right?
Yeah.
So with the videos, it's kind of like, all right, maybe I would rather have had it like this or that, but after I watched it a few times, this actually does work better than I even had thought it was going to be.
How much does it mean to you guys personally as a band when you're having a show and then someone comes up to you and says, that music was really great, it like really inspired me, it really made my day? How important to that is that you have those interactions with your fans?
That's everything, I mean, honestly, it's what makes it worth it to think that someone spent, $15, $20 of their money and they spent, 3 or 4 hours to come out and watch us play, because they absolutely don't have to do that. They could stay home and watch Netflix for free. And, I've made the choice sometimes to go out and go to a show, and I've also made the choice to stay home too. So it's the fact that anybody comes out and sees the show is awesome. Just them coming over to us and feeling comfortable to just kind of, say, that was a good show or a good set. That's kind of like the icing on the cake. I mean, and at the end of the day, like, although the music means a lot to us, I think what means more to us is just like the experiences in general, just meeting new people and be able to have something as a memory. Because, half the time when you're hanging out with your friends, what you're doing is talking about something awesome that happened last week or last month. And this kind of creates that vessel of, like, there's no chance that, like, I would have ever, just been hanging out in Kansas City one random night at a music venue, or hanging out in whatever small town it is. Yeah. If I didn't have some reason to be there, and music has always been the reason to kind of travel and meet new people.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always like to ask people on here is, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and just say like, hey, I'm forming up this band with a couple of my friends or whatever, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give them in order to make their band a success?
Probably the biggest thing is only do it with people that that you're compatible with, that you can be in small spaces for a long time with. When you're in a band, just like we were talking about, that time on stage is about 30 minutes out of the entire day. So that's the smallest portion of being in a band. The biggest portion about being in a band is actually writing music and traveling to play this music. So if you don't like the people you're in a band with, you're definitely not going to be in that band for very long. You've got to compromise, and you also got to make sure that you're not just chasing a current trend, something that you're just currently in for the moment, or something that everybody in your scene seems like they're in for the moment. Because if you're chasing something that's already out there, you're already a few steps behind. So you got to be thinking of, what's the next thing and how do I make that work?
Yeah. And if you were able to talk to yourself 8 years ago when you guys were first forming this band, what would be the musical advice that you would give to yourself?
That's a good one. I don't know. I don't know that I would change anything, I think, like, if you would have asked me back then, it would have been push harder and make sure you get your ideas heard. But then when back to some of that stuff, I say, wow, like if I would have got my idea heard, we would have completely missed out on something really awesome that we have now.
Yeah. All right, so we like to end this podcast with our favorite and most popular segment, our 5 Inside the Actors Ask Studio questions, where we ask 5 questions, and we have the results tallied, and once we reach, I think, the 50th podcast, I think this is podcast 34, so we're getting there, we'll tally up all the answers and then release them and see what the winners are and who has the most votes. So for our first question, out of all the music in the history of music that's ever been written, what is one song that you personally wish you had come up with yourself, and why?
Let's see here. I'm a huge System of a Down fan, which is kind of funny because it's a little different than our style of music.
Yeah.
But picking the one System of a Down song is hard.
Chop Suey.
Yeah, Chop Suey. That's great. I mean, honestly, that Toxicity album kind of changed everybody's mind. And I was in high school when that came out, and it didn't matter what you listened to. You knew about Toxicity, or you knew about Park. Hybrid Theory.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite System of a Down songs is Sweet Pea. It's the first song on their first album. That would have been a really cool song to write.
All right, that is our first Sweet Pea that we have on the board. So for our second question, out of all the artists that have ever lived, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can choose either one. If you could perform live with one artist or band for one show, who would it be and why?
This is going to be another one. I'm just going to completely throw people off with obscure stuff. But Eric Nally from Foxy Shazam, their band started off kind of like Blood Brothers, a really heavy band, and then they went the way of basically Queen. To me, he's the last of a dying breed of showmen that just go out there and give it their all on stage. I mean, people throw cigarettes on stage, and he'll eat like 20 cigarettes at a time. He's doing handstands. He treats the microphone stand like it's a skateboard, and he just flips it around, does all these tricks with it. So animated. Yeah. And to play in a band like that, or to play a show with them would have been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, out of all the venues on the planet, if you had your pick at any venue on the planet to play one show at, where would you pick and why? And I have to do a disclaimer. Red Rocks has already won the vote. They've gotten like 8 votes, and I got really mad, so I disqualified Red Rocks because I didn't want it to be like everyone chooses Red Rocks. So other than Red Rocks, where would you want to play?
Once again, I'm just going to go contrary to anything that's popular because, I could be like, yeah, it'd be awesome to sell out Madison Square Garden. But honestly,
the guy that we just had on said Madison Square Garden too, so yeah.
It's like the bigger show you play, the less connected you feel to people. So I like playing really small places. And this is going to be corny, but 100% I stand by it. There's a place in Salt Lake City called Seventh Circle. Music Collective. Aaron Say runs the place. It's a DIY venue. We've played there a few times, but honestly, we've never played more fun shows. So to play that venue every single night and just have our friends there, I would do that for sure.
Explain to us what a do-it-yourself venue is. Like, what does that mean, and what does that entail?
Yeah, it's so rather than playing a place where you're like seeing a band that has these big old backdrops and it has lights and sounds and whatever pyrotechnics or whatever else, it's more of the feel of, all right, when the band comes on and plays, they're the ones that set up their own gear.
Oh.
The way the sound sounds is basically as good as the band sounds, So the production value is low, but you're right there in the crowd. So like right after you're done playing, you walk right over to the merch booth, and you're the guy selling the actual T-shirts, even though you're in the band. So it's just right up in there. It's part of the crowd. You're not like a guy that's staying backstage, and then you come on right when your gear's already set up, and then you're just playing your set and going backstage.
Have those always been around, or are those more of like a modern invention?
I think they've always been around. Like it goes back to like the old school punk days and everything, back in the 70s, and I'm sure long before that. I think it definitely depends on the scene you're in, but DIY venues are really big for punk bands, hardcore bands, metal bands, even indie bands, I just think that as publicized, So like I think the feel that you get from going to that type of venue is you feel like you belong to something. You feel like you're part of this group. Whereas like if you go to Madison Square Garden and it's sold out, you don't feel connected to anybody in that crowd because you probably don't interact with any of them. Maybe the people are sitting to your left and right, but at a DIY venue, like there's a good chance that if you want to make some friends, you're going to be able to talk to anybody at this place.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of it. For the fourth question, we have guilty pleasure song. What is a guilty pleasure song that that maybe even your bandmates might not know, but for someone who's just meeting you or someone sees you walking down the street would never guess that you enjoy?
Guilty pleasure song. Let's see here. Maybe just like something dumb and new metal that I used to listen to in high school, something like Break Stuff from Limp Bizkit or it's a song that you know is not a great song, but every time you hear it, you're like, all right, I know all the words to this song.
Yeah. All right. Now, lastly, guilty pleasure genre.
Probably also new metal.
New metal.
Because I when I grew up in high school, new metal was buzzing. You know, it was 2000 through 2004. It's kind of the tail end, but also when it was very big, and the new metal was just huge for me. That's when I realized that you didn't have to be someone that was shredding on guitar like Metallica or Slayer or Pantera. You can just get up there and write a good song that had some pop sensibility to it, but it was also something that kind of felt a little bit underground. You know, it was able to be played on the radio, like one or two songs from the album, but then everything else on the album normally would be something that was more underground.
So explain the difference between like new metal and like old classic metal, or like kind of like the Metallica-esque metal.
Yeah, I think new metal was more based in like groove. So new metal is when they started thinking like, how can we make a band like Metallica have more of a structured format? You know, have verses and choruses, and then also bring in like the groove of maybe like hip hop or something. You know, just kind of like it's heavy, it's distorted guitars, it's like raspy vocals, but it's also something you could always just consistently like headbang to.
That's awesome. So, where can people find your band? You guys probably obviously have like a Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. You guys are on Facebook. Where exactly could people look if they wanted to find your guys' music?
Yep, we're on all the above. You know, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, kind of the big ones. But also for streaming, we're on everything: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, YouTube, Bandcamp. Honestly, the best way you can support us is if you go to our Bandcamp. Because on our Bandcamp, if you pick up merch or you download the album, it gives us more money than any other platform. You know, we just hit like 20,000 streams on one of our songs on Spotify.
Oh, wow.
And that's maybe like $50. So if you download something on Bandcamp, we're seeing like a couple bucks from every download. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll definitely leave a link below for all that stuff. And do you guys have any music that you guys are working on right now to come out with, or what's up with that right now?
Yep. So we're following up our last single, Weep, with another single that will probably be premiering here within the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Okay.
We're hoping that every other month from then we can kind of release a song and a video too. We just want to keep, consistently getting out stuff. We don't want to wait for another 2 or 3 years to get out another album. I'm sure we'll get back to the point where we're doing full albums again. But for right now, it's just about how we can continually improve upon what we're already doing.
All right. Yeah, and if you guys ever need anything, again, like, you guys are more than welcome to come back on. We can get the whole band on maybe sometime, and then anything that you need promotion-wise, here's my deal. You literally just shoot me a message on Facebook. I will promote it. You guys need a single. You guys have an upcoming show that you guys want me to mention on the podcast. More than happy to do it. No questions asked. No worries. And, it was great having you on the show, and is there anything that you want to promote or plug, or any bands in the area that you'd like to mention too before we cut her off here?
Man, there's so many bands right now that are just killing it in Arizona. Some of my favorite bands are Playboy Man Baby. They're more of like an indie rock band. If you're into like Modest Mouse, maybe more along that style, but a little more punk rock. Sundress is an awesome like pop punk band that's killing it. You've got Gatecreeper and Woundvac, both really awesome bands that are more in like the death metal styles. There's just like a little bit of everything. It doesn't matter what you listen to, Arizona kind of has it right now. Yeah. And then also, thank you for letting me be on here and also giving a platform to other bands, because I think that's something that right now, like when you've got so much stuff out there getting pushed at you nonstop, I think the best way to discover new music is by someone that you trust their opinion on. So you bringing up on bands that you listen to or you enjoy or that you're kind of backing allows people to get to a bigger fan base. And hopefully the bands that are on here, just like we'll do, help you grow as a podcaster as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one. I mean, I honestly just started this out just for fun, but then I kind of realized, like, hey, it's a mutual thing. Like, bands are helping me out, and I'm helping them out, and it's a great feeling. I mean, I love having bands like you guys on and talking music with them and helping get the word out on them, because, I mean, all these bands, it's so sad to think about, like, all those bands, there's thousands of them every year, where they have the talent to have made something out of it, but just because they got a lot of rough breaks, they didn't get the exposure that they needed, I mean, they just didn't see it through. So I always just figure if there's even, like, one band through all this that I helped out, like, maybe, like, make it and just become a super success, I mean, that's, I'd have done my entire job. So it's just, just kind of, like, giving back and just helping out people, which, I mean, I can't tell you how great it feels and just how much I enjoy doing this. But yeah, I mean, once again, man, it was great having you on. And, American Standards, you guys definitely give these guys a listen. I'll have all the links to all of their stuff down below. I mean, definitely check these guys out. I really think that these guys have something really going for them. And I say watch out for these guys in the coming years. And when you guys do have that Midwest tour coming up, and if you're in the Minneapolis or Minnesota area, definitely let me know. And I would be glad to come down and see you guys play for sure. And, yeah, I mean, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great night, everyone. And, again, American Standards, give these guys a shout-out.
Appreciate it.